Welcome back to another property Q&A. I'm Sophia.
And I'm Lauren.
And we're going to be answering your questions today.
Most of my pay is gone by the end of the month, but I dream of owning a property. Can someone actually buy a property in Singapore for just $1?
Very ambitious individual. Yeah. I love it.
Yes.
Okay, but can you actually buy a property for $1 in Singapore? Now, generally, I would say no, but if you're asking if you can buy an undervalued property in Singapore, like for example, like in Tampines, in the news a while ago, it came out that there was a flat that sold for 100k.
Yeah, it's a 4-room flat.
Yeah, but then in the whole estate, right, the rest of the flats were selling at about 600k.
Exactly.
So that's why it came out in the news, because it just completely didn't make sense, right? But is it actually allowed? So technically, if your property, be it HDB or condo, is fully paid in cash, you can actually sell it for whatever price you want, as long as there's willing buyer, willing seller. But then if you have loan and stuff, it's different.
Correct. Because if you are taking a loan, be it a bank loan or HDB, a valuer will be involved. So if you are taking a bank loan, the bank will actually do valuation first, and the loan LTV, loan to value, is actually dependent on the valuation. And if you are buying a HDB, obviously HDB will send a valuer down as well. If you are asking for this kind of severely undervalued property transaction, I do think that IRAS will also do a valuation on their side to charge in terms of the stamp duty. Yeah, because on top of just buying a property, there are other costs involved. For example, paying the stamp duty. If you are buying a property, there is a purchase price as well as a valuation. Stamp duty is always dependent on whichever is higher. So let's say if you're buying a severely undervalued property, IRAS decided to do an individual valuation on the property to charge you for the stamp duty, they will do so. And your stamp duty will be dependent on whatever valuation that IRAS has assessed.
Meaning I can buy for like 100k if let's say the seller doesn't mind, but my stamp duty, if the market value is 600k, I'll still be charged on that, right?
Absolutely right.
Okay. But to this individual who dreams of owning a property but every month left with $1 by end of the pay, I have one suggestion for you, okay? Just save through your CPF from your employer and eventually buy a HDB, because you don't need to fork out much cash when it's HDB.
Yes, that's right.
Okay, moving on to our next question. My neighbour living above me in my condo likes to do gardening but uses an absolutely terrible smelling fertilizer, and my balcony is right below. The smell often travels into my house. Is there any way I can solve this? Have you ever experienced anything like that before?
Actually, not me per se, but I have a tenant that once complained to me that their neighbor was eating durians and he couldn't stand the smell, and he's asking if there's anything I can do on their behalf. Like, can they complain the neighbor or something like that? To be honest, do you think they can do anything about it?
So I think there are a few solutions. So of course, the first is always to try and talk to your neighbor upstairs.
Yes.
Go for a friendly chat. Most people don't even know that what they're doing is kind of affecting you. So I think generally you can try and talk to your neighbor first. Other things, maybe practical fixes.
Yeah.
Let me think what you can do. Yeah, maybe put a seal on the door or something.
Correct. They can actually, I mean, if you are more of the non-confrontational, unfortunately, they're eating durians in their house. For example, the case of my tenant, there's nothing much we can do about it. But what I ask them to do, practical fixes. Close the window, try to seal it up, or just stay indoor during that period. The smell will dissipate after a while, right? Alternatively, they can actually speak to MCST to see if there's any way they can come in to mediate this matter.
A very poor thing. So forever I need to close my window and close my door.
I mean, if you want to, okay, for this case whereby I would think that the this smell would be quite permanent compared to durian, because you only eat durian like for that 20 minutes, 30 minutes, and that's it, right?
Okay, you're not eating the dirt.
Yeah, but this one...
Okay. I'll say one thing, the nuclear option, right, for something like that, because I think like the fertilizer, the chemicals or whatever, maybe not very good for you. If you can prove that it's a health risk for your home or even your other neighbours, your worst case, right, if you talk to your neighbour, it doesn't work. If you try to fix yourself, it doesn't work. If you go to MCSD, it still doesn't work. In this case, you can actually try to put out a report to NEA and then they will look at it. But nuclear option, we always want to try the peace option first. Yeah.
Okay, go all the way to NEA. I mean, if you feel that it affects your health, I guess.
Yeah, especially you got kids that are sensitive to the smell and all this kind of thing.
Correct.
But yeah, I really feel for this owner.
I keep seeing ads from property gurus claiming to own multiple properties. With all the rules and costs in Singapore, how's that even happening?
I know exactly what you're talking about.
Me too.
You know, when you watch your YouTube video, maybe we are in the algorithm because you always watch property
we got
stuff.
targeted.
Then you get all the own 10 properties today, 100 properties.
How is it possible?
I think for most people, the question on their mind is, wow, I can't even afford 1-2 property. There is so many rules and all this. So how are people actually doing it?
Yes, because if you're talking about residential property itself, to own the first property for Singaporeans, you already have to pay a buyer stamp duty BSD starting from 3% tiered upwards. To own a second residential property, the additional buyer stamp duty on top of buyer stamp duty is already 20%. So for example, if you buy a 2 million property, additional buyer stamp duty is already 400,000. And third property, 30%. So in this context, doesn't seem possible.
Yeah, I think for most people, if you're talking about the 10 property purely being residential, then it doesn't really make sense, like cost-wise. But in most of these cases, what they are actually referring to in terms of their second, third property, all the way to their 10th property, would usually be commercial property because there is no ABSD on that. In fact, even if you are someone that owns a HDB and you haven't even reached your MOP, you can already buy a commercial property. So there's much less restriction. And also, some people, I think they will also go into foreign property.
Correct.
Because there will be no ABSD on that as well. So that's how they stack up and end up having more property. I also heard that for some companies, what they actually do, don't quote us on this, is they will actually get a bunch of people to come together and invest, right?
Correct. They will set up companies and then they have like a group of ready shareholders that will contribute and they will buy some commercial properties and let it make money down the road.
So even if let's say they own like 1%, 2% in the property,
they are still
this adds to the count in a way. So theoretically, if you want to own multiple properties without having the ABSD cost or that, something you can look into will be commercial property or foreign property. Alright, moving on to the next question. My husband and I are planning to buy our first home and a friend told me to just use one name. So next time it will be easier to buy an investment property next. I get the logic, but I also worry what if things change in the future. If the house is only under one name, but both of us are paying, is that risky? Just wondering if this is advisable. So to sum up this question, the person is asking, if the other person run away, then how, right?
I think it's either that or maybe something happened to their relationship.
Okay. I guess some people will have this concern because honestly, you never know what the future holds in a way. Okay, I get why the friend is recommending this also. So if you're talking about purely an investment perspective and they're getting their first home and they're looking to get another investment one soon, then I would say this is probably the most seamless way to do it.
Correct.
But based on this, of course, if let's say you are following this way, even if your name is not in the first property, from what I heard, if let's say anything happens and you can prove that you have financially contributed to this property, you actually have a case, but of course consult your lawyer for this. But we have seen that in this way, as long as you can prove it, you can protect yourself in a way.
So this is what I have heard from divorce lawyers actually. They have been handling divorce cases and they said that let's say if the husband actually paid for a property under the wife's name, the wife paid nothing. Even if they were to split and the husband can show proof of him paying cash towards here, he actually can claim against this property. And also, let's say if you really are not comfortable buying under one name, probably you are newlywed or you have not really discussed on your financials together with your partner, what I would suggest is there's also a strategic way of considering decoupling in future. Meaning to say, you can buy a property under both names first. And ultimately, if you have decided down the road that you want to buy another property, you can decouple, meaning to say one owner can buy over the other owner's share and the other owners can come up and buy another property without ABSD. But of course, this cannot be done for HDB. It's only for private properties.
But I think as with all things, even if let's say you're not even buying with your husband per se, some people like to invest with their friends, right? Just like all this, is very important to lay it down, have the conversation, black and white, worst case scenario, what happens. Because I think just like, okay, let's say in a couple, how you want to raise your kids, these are things you would discuss, your financials. So it's very important to have things outlay before you even go into it.
And property in Singapore context, I do find that especially between married couples or not, it is a very serious financial move. So definitely you have to talk it out.
Yeah, it's one of the biggest purchases that you will ever make.
Yes, but if you make the right move, then congratulations to you. You're building a bigger future.
Yeah, I hope you all do great with both these properties.
Yes.
And that's all for today's questions.
Thanks for all the questions. Keep them coming.
Yes, if you have any other, you're welcome to submit them on our social media, and we'll catch you all in the next video.